Hi, Jason. Welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks, Ken. How are you?
I'm good. You're a man of many talents. I know you've had a ton of different business ventures. You're an ultra marathon runner. You're a father. You got lots of stuff going on. But I'd love to hear the backstory and how you got to where you are now. And you can start on that wherever you want, Jason. I just want to get to know you.
Yeah, so I had the pleasure to speak to a group of college students last night. I was thinking back because they were sitting in this room and they have these aspirations. They have a really direct path of what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. And I was thinking back to when I was leaving college. I was in this lost state, right? I had a business degree, with a major going in finance, and I didn't want anything to do with that. I had picked my major based on a girlfriend I had at the time. Her mom said, you're good at math. Why don't you do business? And that was like my direction for picking a major. And I left college not really with a direction out there. And I moved into New York City and I started working in restaurants and bars, right? Very nonlinear path from finance into restaurant and bars.
Sure.
And that led me for a number of years. And I had just that part where I was just doing as the day came. Right. Because I knew no other way. So, today's another day to go work at the bar or the restaurant or wherever I was until a moment happened that I actually got hit by a car on my bike. And it was, late at night, I was coming back from work and I was just, I was unhappy where I was. I was blaming everybody else. I was pointing the finger at everywhere and anywhere but myself. And I had that moment of clarity where luckily, I had a bunch of broken things, but I didn't die that night. And I had that moment where the next day I had to say, like, listen, you continue to do chaotic things and you continue to get chaotic results. And you can either just continue to get chaotic results and then stop being upset at everybody else over it, or you start to make changes. Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that magically overnight, like the next day was perfect, right? And went on this magical journey, but I started to be cognizant of what I was doing more and more. Started to transform and transcend how I would just show up each day, start to, change my mind instead of thinking everything from the negative, start to look at things more in a positive light, look at all the potential I had in front of me, started to get up earlier, work out more, just do things that gave me a more positive mindset about how the day could be instead of saying the day can't be. And that led me into opening a restaurant and then opening a bar, or opening and selling a brewery. And then in early 2010 to 2011, Hurricane Sandy happened on the East Coast and just decimated a number of houses, hundreds of thousands of houses. And my dad had a family construction business that he just retired from. Well, his business was very, very niche. He would move houses for a lot of reasons, but one of them would be for flooding. So he would do 10 projects, 12 projects a year, just a very unique business that just wasn't always called for because not anybody had any idea what it was. Well, overnight, his business went from just those 8, 10, 12 jobs a year to 1,000 calls a day. So my little
Whoa.
brother's working for me. My now wife, at that time, my girlfriend Peely was working with me at some of our businesses that we go. And we picked up, moved out of New York City, moved to New Jersey, and started helping dad in the family construction business. And that was a really good experience. It was something we never wanted to do, right? I saw my dad really have to struggle through a business that was very tough, very demanding for many years. And I was trying to find a different route, right? Well, we were able to help dad go from those 8, 10, 12 projects a year to 250 at the max that we were doing a year. So just an amazing amount of growth and just opportunity to expand. That opened our eyes to just what could potentially be done if we all were pointing in the right direction. However, the one thing that was constantly missing was my time. I had no time. The day was running me. It was a very, as I said, unique, demanding business that you couldn't outsource. You're lifting someone's, most prized possession, their house, and you're basically a little fitting away from failure at all times. So there's a ton of risk. So we were always very hands-on with the projects. And as busy as we were, now Healy, who is my wife, is pregnant with our first kid. I just said, we got to do something different because we continue to do this. It's going to be the same thing. My dad, I don't know why that happened with the
I don't
thumbs,
either.
but
Well,
my
you guys can't
dad,
see it. Sorry, you guys can't see it, but I got to address it because I don't know how to
yeah,
shut them off. We're getting the random emojis that come up now in Zoom. So I don't
yeah, I
know.
love it.
We can't be alone in this.
I had balloons come up the other day. I have no idea what I did,
I
right?
had a
But on that
thumbs
front.
down during a client call the other day.
Oh
So
no,
yeah, in the middle of a
yeah,
pitch, a
interesting.
thumbs down. So anyway,
Interesting. Well, fast forward is that we started moving into real estate. We wanted to get time back. And we started moving into real estate. However, when we were doing real estate, we started doing flipping and wholesaling. And what we found is we were doing really active real estate projects along with the really active construction projects, and we were actually getting less time, right? So now
Right.
we went from no time to less time. And I came upon someone, actually, Peely did, who she met at a real estate meeting who was investing out of state. And I said, "Oh, interesting." And they were buying single family homes, 1,000 miles away from where we were in New Jersey, in Indiana. And we said, "Huh." And I started to proactively go out there and follow that model, except I started buying 2 families and 3 families and 4 families. And lo and behold, I was able to pull us out of the day to day, run to Home Depot, meeting contractors, just all the things that had to happen. And it forced me to put teams together on site 1,000 miles away. And lo and behold, property started to perform. We started to get cash flow. And we're like, I get it. However, it wasn't scalable, right? To have like 50 duplexes like all around the country seemed like a logistical nightmare. So I kept asking the question, like, okay, so what are we missing? And I came upon a podcast, like just listen like this, that was someone was investing, buying apartment communities, basically like people who've lived in an apartment community, like that kind of thing, a large building. And that was my light bulb moment. I said, I get it. I've had small restaurants, larger restaurants. I've seen a small construction company, a big construction company. It's the same model, but you're able to get more economies of scale as you grow in most businesses as you go up. So we sold all the small properties, and in 2017 brought our first 94 unit. That was in Louisville, Kentucky. And now we've brought about 3,000 apartment units across 8 states since to date.
Wow. How when you're doing something like that, how because now in such a short period of time you went from having like no doors to 3,000 plus. In that journey, was it cash flowing immediately, or is it cash flowing but just at a smaller scale, or does it take a while to actually start turning a profit and something like this? And did you have to use a lot of your own money and resources to even get going?
Yeah, great question. So we look for properties that have some inherent built-in cash flow, and it's just not being optimized. So typically, the tenants are either not the right tenant base for what the market demands, or the tenants are just being offered a less rent, right? So the first properties we went into, the 94 unit, I believe at the time that the rents were like $500 and $600 for like 1 and 2 bedrooms, when the market demanded like 650 to 800. So we were able to go in there and make choice improvements, right? Both based on both marketing and different renovations to the units to go in there and drive the rents up. However, some of that same tenant base, we can renew them at the higher rents because all of the surrounding properties were already charging that rent. So there will be cash flow. And what we do is we go in there to look to improve the cash flow, but then we have the built-in profit too. So if you were to make $100,000 in profit, we would typically look to have about 35 to 45,000 of it come from cash flow, monthly cash flow from tenants paying, and then the rest will come from the built-in profit at the sale from the improvements we've made.
Got it. And so I'm going to go off of that for a minute. I want to go
Sure.
back to when does, because I know you're an ultra marathoner, which is not something that you stumble into. Did that come along at the same time as kind of the car accident and the wake up, or had you been doing that before then?
I was just already doing running, but I was doing marathons. I played sports, growing up, basketball, football. I never had done long distance running. And lo and behold, I'm looking at some activity to get myself more involved in. So I started running because I know friends that played any sports in New York City anymore because they were too busy with their W-2 jobs.
Sure.
So I just started running. And it was this fun thing that I still enjoy today is that, it's like you see so much of a city. Like you travel somewhere, you go running, you get to see so much. And I didn't come upon ultra marathon running until I think 2016, maybe. Because I just had never heard of it, right? I didn't even know it existed. A marathon was a marathon. I thought that was, the marathon. And I came
Right.
upon wherever I did people running these long distance races. And I was like, how cool. And it was that next evolution of me just wanting to test my barriers. But what's been good with that is that, I think of it, I talked to something called the 100-mile mindset, is that, we get so focused on the goal, but you spend all the time in the journey. And these apartment communities, when we buy them, they're typically 5 or 7 year holds where it's all the journey until you get to the goal to sell the thing, right? But if
Right.
we're always looking at the goal and not spending time really focused and enjoying the journey, then when we do get to the goal, it's not going to be that fulfilling. And for these 100-mile races, I've broken it down into things that I could actually go out there and accomplish. as I first got prepared for running a 100-mile race. I just had no idea, right? You run a marathon, and there's typically like a marathon training program that maybe a couple of weeks out, you might run like 2 20-mile races just to
Sure.
prepare yourself for that mentally. I couldn't fathom that, before a 100-mile race, I would run like an 80-mile run. I was like, that doesn't make sense. So like, what can I do that could actually make sense? And so I started running 6 miles for like 150 or 200 days straight, every single day. If it was cold, if it was, freezing, if it was 100 degrees, if my foot hurt, if I was sick, my ear hurt, didn't matter. I would just get up every single day, no matter what, go and run that 6 miles. And it allowed me to condition my mind that the day is not going to be perfect. But if you go through and push through the things that you need to do, you will find your perfect day within there, regardless of how the day has shown up for you. And that's helped me really form my mind to just look at challenges today, is that I have to get up and do these consistent patterns each and every day. I get up and have a certain approach of when I wake up, how I show up, have a glass of water, have coffee, meditate, go work out, and then spend time with my kids, right? And I do that each and every day as it goes. And that's given me a good repertoire to be ready for the day after, because I've created that series of wins that if I get through that, and let's say, I get them to school and now it's, 7:30 in the morning, and the day just blows up on me, I've already had some patterns of wins. And for most, and I was stuck there for a long time, is that I would wake up late, right? I would be late for something. I would be out of control. I'd be rushing, and then that part, you stub your toe, you get in the shower, you probably eat something poor, you're stuck in traffic, and everything's chaotic. You get to the job, every fire seems like it's this unsurmountable thing you can't get past. You get to the end of the day, you get stuck in traffic coming back. You say, I will never do that again. You sit down, watch Netflix, have a beer, and then the next day happens the same exact way. And then it
Sure.
repeats for another decade. And you say, how did I get here? And I was
Yeah.
on that path for many years until I just decided, like, enough's enough. I
Yeah. It's
have to do
funny.
something.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
Yeah.
talking to someone the other day about this exactly. I've ran several marathons myself, and it's
Awesome.
funny because you've been asked this a million times. Because I would even ask it of you of an ultra, because I've never ran one, and the question's always like, "What's it like to run 100 miles? What's it like to run 26 miles? Whatever it is."
Yeah.
Which we could apply to anything in life, right? That's hard to do, that you've never done before. But I think that mindset of focusing constantly on the thing you haven't been to before, as if it in and of itself is the only goal, kind of like, you're relating it back to multifamily, and using running as part of it. But I remember when I started training, I had a great coach who, like, the same advice you're giving right now, where it was like, no, you're not able to run 20 miles right now, which will be your last training run. That doesn't even matter. Like, that's so far away, it doesn't even matter. Right now you're capable of running 3, so by next week let's get capable of running 4, and then 5, and then 6, and let's do all the things in between, and let's kind of enjoy the journey. That's the other part of what you're saying that I really love. There's a TED talk by a guy named Sean Aker that's really, really cool, and I think it's called The Happy Secret to Better Work. And what he talks about is how we're conditioned as a society to only allow ourselves to feel fulfillment when we reach a goal. But if we're goal oriented, what do we do when we reach a goal? We just set another goal. So we're constantly in this process of looking like achievers. Everything looks great on paper because you're getting a lot of stuff done, but you're
Yeah.
just replacing a goal with a goal with a goal with a goal. And unless we find a way to enjoy it, yeah,
Yeah, you're constantly unfulfilled, right? Because each
constantly.
goal is just, well, I'm there, so I guess I have to get another goal, right?
Sometimes even
Yeah.
beforehand, right? When
Mm.
you've got it bagged, you're like, I got this. I'll,
Yeah.
move on, right?
Yeah.
And pretty soon there's nothing left there. And I think people feel it in their careers. When I make VP, life will be great. When I make this much money, everything will be perfect, right? And it just doesn't always work that way.
What's interesting about what you're saying is you think about it like a lot of things. You think about like weight loss, right? People forget to think about like who you become when you get to that person, right? They said so
Right.
much days, like, I need to lose 30 pounds. And then they lose 30 pounds and they haven't lived who they will be at that person. So they gain the weight back, right? Because they don't know how to exist as that person, right? Or, like, oh, I've made $1 million, but then you do a lot of things that really are probably offline for how you want to show up as a person, because all you focus on is making the money, right? And so you
Right.
get to that money and then it's not fulfilled because you've just made this money doing things that really don't serve who you want to be, right? And so many times we get lost in doing things, but we don't think of like, who am I going to show up as that person? So I lose 30 pounds, like I can't still do the same like calorie deficit every day or I'm going to disappear, right? And so like
Right.
how I show up, how I live my life, right? And these goals have to be part of like, what do we build our life into when we get there? If
Right.
I want to start this business, okay, what is my life going to look like when this business is running? Right? If I want to go out and meet that special someone, like how am I showing up today to become that person that would be welcome to meet that special someone? Right? I can't meet anybody. Well, how are you showing up today? Are you putting all the emphasis like there's not the perfect person, that every conversation is like trying to draw out to be that perfect person that's in front of you, instead of just showing up to be a happy person who's just happy with life, that's going to attract the person you're looking for.
No, that's such a good point. I mean, and even using the weight loss example, like instead of going, I want to lose 30 pounds because I should, or it'll feel better, it's maybe a better way to phrase that, at least for myself, would be I want to become a person that's vital and healthy and is going to live a
Mhm.
long life. And
Yeah,
what are the habits and rituals that I need to build to get there? And the weight loss
exactly.
is part of it. It's also, again, we'll use the running thing because I think it's easy because it's numeric, right? It's easy to weight loss and running and stuff like that is very easy to. But one thing that coach did for me in that first marathon also was once I become clear on what I'm trying to do and who I'm trying to become as a result of it, and the plan is solid, like I believe in the plan, right? I have the resource, I have the plan, I have the coaches, I have whatever I need is there. Then to me, the outcome is actually a foregone conclusion as long as I just do the work, right? Like
Absolutely.
if I just show up and do what I'm supposed to do this week and
Yeah.
do it again next week, then in 40 weeks from now, I'm going to run a marathon and I'm probably going to do it for a pretty good time, which is what ended up happening, right? And now you've
Awesome.
done it and it's easier to do the next time. So, yeah, that's so cool. And I think we can apply it to a lot of things. It's like, what am I trying to get out of this? I spent a lot of my career just trying to get promoted. You know what I mean? Like
Uh,
just trying to get the next big job, just trying to get the next big paycheck without even thinking about what is this job? Do I even really want to do it? What's my life going to be like after I get it? Do you relate to that?
it's hard because we look at these goals as like life will be perfect, or like, but we almost assume like life stops. Like the second I get there, like life stops, but
Right.
it doesn't, right? There's just a peg that you put on the board, and then it continues to go, right? And that's the hardest thing for us to realize, especially as I was young, is that like if I get to this point, then everything will be perfect. Well,
Right.
why? Right? Is it actually my why? Is it my assumption, or am I seeing it somewhere else? And we're in front of so much data and so much, video, or just so many things of people doing these magical things out there, that we forget to say that that's like a highlight reel. And so we put all of our goals and all of our assessments on what a happy life looks like based on what we see from other people, right? And so we
Right.
get back to our true point. Like you think of anything, like for running, or anything, we set so many roadblocks in our mind, right? We treat everything as if it's like stepping off a 10-story building, right? When most of the time it's like stepping off a curb. And so,
Right.
like what you said, running earlier, like to get to a 20-mile run when you hadn't run 3 miles yet seemed like unsurmountable.
Right.
But then you start doing the steps each and every week and you run 26.2 miles. Well, why was that, right? Is because you started to do the actual steps that you could control each day, instead of getting feared from the wall, from the starting line, by that 20-mile run. But
Right.
most of the time, we get scared back because we have these audacious goals, but we don't have the first step.
Right.
And that's usually all you need to do is take that first step, because the first step usually leads you to three things. It says, okay, I took that first step and it was absolutely wrong. You're like, okay, well, don't do that again. So at least you
Right.
eliminated something not to do. And at least you know not what not to do again, and you've gotten rid of something. Or you take a step and it's kind of on the right path, but it's not exactly right. And now you can assess it and say, okay, what do I need to do to pivot to get back in line? Or you're on the right direction. Keep going. But I
Yep.
promise you this: if you do nothing, you will get nothing. Right? That we know. Right? But if you do something, you get one of those three things. That's literally the only things that can happen. But if
Totally.
you do nothing, nothing will happen.
Exactly. And I really do think that's where people get stuck, right? It's like I need everything right now. And really society's kind of wired that way, right?
Mm.
I'm a failure until I'm a winner, right? You're losing until you're winning basically.
Yeah.
And it's like no, you're winning if you're just on the path and doing the stuff you're supposed to do. You don't even have to have the outcome yet. So I think that's awesome. I've heard you talk before about 4-3-2-1 the day. What does that mean?
I started really having to change. It just was a series of bad habits, like I had said earlier, right? So
Yeah.
just getting up late, drinking the night before, just doing things that just were not going to serve me to get me to levels that I wanted to be at, right? And again, I was still trying to figure out, like, what does that even mean? Like levels I want to be at, just be a better human. And I started getting up very early, 4:32 a.m. Because I found that if I said 5 a.m., well, that five could mean I could hit the snooze button one time, get at 5:05. It was 5:30. You always do these like very like roundabout numbers that have no meaning. So I said it, okay, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And I just got out of bed, splash some water on my face, and just start going about my day. Because usually you hit the snooze button, it doesn't help. It's not like you sleep another 5, 10, 15 minutes. You're like, magically, I'm better, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. The second you're up, you're good to go. And that's just the pattern of life. And so I really had to set the stage to take back control. 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Get out of bed, get up, and just start going after my day. And it allowed me to really take back control and seize my day in a way that I just wasn't for my whole life. Because, especially I was talking to those college kids last night, like some of their, sophomores and juniors, first time away from home. There's no one there like holding them accountable. Like, you got to get up and get to bed. You got to get up and get to practice. You got to get up to get to X, right? They're on their own, right? And they're trying to figure out, like, how do I make myself get up? Like, what are these things that help to drive me forward here? Because now I'm on my own, right? There's no one
Right.
here holding me accountable anymore. And even as you continue to have these new beginnings, going out to the world, your first job, your first house, your first, you get married, like all these things, like there are all these new beginnings. Like you have to figure out, like, how do I show up in a way that's going to serve me in the right way? And how do I hold myself accountable? I tell you, it's really easy to hold other people accountable, right?
Right.
Oh, you didn't do this. You didn't get this to me on time. You didn't do that part, but we're not showing up. We're not showing up to ourselves, right? I could be
Right.
late. I could do all these things and behind. I could not work out. I could eat poorly. I could do those things, but I'm not going to call myself out. But I could call you out. Hey, you were late, or you said you would have this over to me at this time, and why didn't you do this, right? Because it's so easy for me to deflect from what I'm actually not doing and put the emphasis on other people. But the second we turn around and hold ourselves accountable, what starts to happen? Right? You start showing up, people start showing up. It starts rising everybody together because you started to take control
Yeah.
of your day, of your time, of your actions.
I think the other part of that, Jason, that I think is when you take control, going, I can't control what other people do. I can't control the weather. I can't control the stock market. I can't control how people are going to show up, but I can do the stuff I'm supposed to do, right? I can get up at 4:32 in the morning if I'm that crazy, maybe 5:32, whatever that is for you, right?
Whatever's your number,
Yeah,
correct?
whatever your number is, but you do what you're going to do and you do it consistently and you show up the way you're supposed to in the thing. You can control that. And by understanding, I think that I have no control over anyone else. And the more I'm relying on things that I can't control, the more I'm actually giving away my power in a way, right? Because I'm going, well, my happiness, my outcome is dependent upon all these circumstances or people that I can't even control. I'm just like the definition of me having a good day or a good outcome is relying on something else instead of just me. And that doesn't mean that just because I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do, that everything is going to go my way every day. But over time, it definitely will, and I'll be congruent and in integrity with myself.
You have the option to do two things each day in control, right? You can control what you give, and you
Yeah,
can control to how you react to what's given to you.
yeah,
And most of the time, we don't give in the best light, and we react poorly to what's given to us. And if you
totally.
can just take back those two things each day, your day will massively transform.
Yeah. If you think about it, I've got a friend and a good mentor actually. And he talks about how so many people live their lives through if then statements, right? Almost like an
Mm.
Excel formula. If this just happened,
Yeah, I like
then
it.
yeah, it's like going
Yeah,
back to the promotion. If I just get promoted to VP, then my
yeah.
relationship would be better somehow or whatever, right? And it's like, no, it doesn't really work that way. Very cool. So tell me about the Bottle John effect. I've heard you talk about
So,
that before.
you know, sometimes we don't have a vision, right? And sometimes others have a vision, we can't see it. And many times in our life, we may be out there like doing something, right? You start this podcast or we start a business or you start something else and no one sees your vision. No one believes in you because you haven't done it before, right? Or someone says, hey, I'm going to go out there and make the football team. I'm going to go out there and do this thing that's going to help the community. I'm going to go start a church. Just think of anything that you start. And people don't believe in you because they haven't seen you do things before. And then all of a sudden you do something that no one else had ever been imagined to what was there. And I was working at a bar in New York City, and it was a very crazy outdoor bar, and it would just have, people come each night. And it was always reckless because it was outdoors during the summer. It would close at always very weird times, 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, very uncertain times. And so he would have staff that would come and go. The guy's name was Captain Krevity. He was out on a barge, right? And so his name was Captain, working on a barge. And at the end of the night, it would just be chaos. There would be bottles everywhere, just very a big mess that each and every day and the next day he'd have to figure out how to deal with because he couldn't keep staff just based on the unpredictable nature of it. One night, this guy walks out. His name's John. And John says to Captain Krabby, hey, listen, can I just pick up the bottles? And all I ask, you don't have to pay me, is that I'm just going to take them away and just recycle, right? And Captain Krabby says, yeah, of course. Just thinking the guy's not going to show up just like everybody else the next night. Well, lo and behold, the guy shows up the next night, shows up the next night, shows up the next night, shows up again. And this little outdoor bar in New York City becomes the biggest outdoor bar in New York City. It
Wow.
starts to sell so much beer that no longer can we sell beer bottles. We can only sell Corona, because that was all that we could stock because of how busy the bar were. The bar turns out to be it sells the most Corona in the world in 3 months compared to any other bar in the world in three
Whoa.
months. That's how much it starts going. There was thousands of cases that would come each and every day just to keep up the demand out there. And who's there picking up and recycling the bottles but John? And so I knew him as Bottle John, right? And Bottle John's there showing up, and now it's him. Now he's got a couple other people. Now he's got a couple other people working with him, right? And they're taking off tens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of cases each and every day. They're taking off from recycling. Well, I learned later, John is a homeless guy. He was a homeless guy just that didn't want to accept where he was. He was stuck where he was, and he just wanted to do something different and have more of an impact. Well, fast forward a couple of years, I'd moved out from this bar, right? Sitting in the subway. If you've ever been in New York City, in the subway in the summer, it's just miserable. Sitting out there, just hot no matter what. There's no ventilation, it's just hot and miserable. Sitting there, head down, and what do I see walking up with this really well-dressed man, right? And just walking through in there in the subway, just walking through, and he catches my eye, and it turns out it's Bottle John. Well, Bottle John had got himself off the street to an effect that he had now helped other homeless people with having a job. He had not only just started this with our bar, but he started to do this at other bars. He had found and got himself at home. He was able to reconcile with his family, help them now come back together, right? All because he had this random vision that he wasn't going to accept where he was. He was not going to stay where he was, which was homeless, and blame circumstances and just ask. He went out there and made an impact that no one else could see and no one else could predict. And it gave him all of the recipe to have a success that he absolutely deserved, just by going out there and saying, you know what, let me go see what I can do to take back control of my life.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And I
Yeah,
lived
it
in
was
New
incredible.
York the last 3 years. We lived in Brooklyn. We just bought a house up in
Yeah,
Nyack. So I'm definitely aware of the subways in the summer. But
yeah.
that is so cool. So you got to have a little talk with Bottle John and hear about everything that was going on in his life,
Yeah.
huh?
A couple seconds of passing out of nowhere, and just like one of those things that like it comes full circle,
Yeah.
right? It comes full circle, and just what happens in life is that if you just take back control. And
Yeah.
it's that part of that, he couldn't predict that it'd become that bar, right? You couldn't predict how things would grow, but what he could predict is that I have to do something because what I've done has got me here, right? And most of the time we accept what we have and you say, well, this is it, right? I don't have the education, I don't have the upbringing, I don't have the family connections, I wasn't raised with money, I've bad money habits, I don't have my health, right? And so you blame everything else, and instead of just saying, well, you know what, this is where I am, this is my starting line.
Right.
Today is my starting line, no matter where I stand, no matter what I do right this moment, but I can transcend to start to do different things
Yeah.
and start to change my habits each and every day. Start going to night school. I start to, go out to meetups. I start to listen to more podcasts instead of music on my way to work, right? All these different things to start making a change and a dent in what I was to what I want to become.
Absolutely. And these subjects that we're talking about, Jason, it's, and what you're talking about right now is that there's never a lack of resources, right? It's old Tony
Mhm.
Robbins quote. It's never a lack of resources, it's always a lack of resourcefulness, right? There's always the resources there if you're looking hard enough and if your North Star is kind of clear enough. But I think what we were talking about earlier about, you know I think building the muscle of sort of self-worth and self-confidence through the 432, right? Through getting up, doing what you're supposed to do. It's like you build yourself up to, I think, then take advantage of these opportunities when they come up. And I've been on both sides of that coin. I probably spent more time on the other side, frankly, when I was younger, and pointing fingers and blaming, and how come I'm not getting delivered the things from the universe that other people were. And when I saw successful people, I go, that guy's lucky. Like, I'm smarter than him, and maybe I was, but I definitely wasn't more resourceful. You know what I mean?
It's definitely it's funny how much emphasis we put on luck.
Yeah.
Like I've been there, just how lucky people are when in fact it's not. They were doing things to be prepared when they showed up, right? And so
Yep.
when you think about all the things and all the opportunities we have right now, it's because we're going out there to take action. So when they show up, we can do something, right? And I did have to build we'll say a thicker skin, right? But if
Yeah.
someone's listening right now, for many of us, if you think back, like tell me the worst thing that happened to you 5 years ago. Like you probably have no idea, right? Because it
Right.
was something on your part that was just something that happened that you've grown so much from. But at the moment, it probably decapitated you at the moment, right? It probably just paralyzed you to the point because I'm never going to survive, right? It could have
Right.
been that, you got fired from your job, right?
Right.
And it turned out that what happened from there, well, you went and found a better job that was better serving, you're happier out. You went there and started a business. You went there and, traveled for a year before going to get another job. You've done 50 different things that have given you the life that you wanted, that you're grown from now, that at the moment you thought you would never survive from. But here
Right.
you are.
Right. And I think what happens, and again, it's happened to me, and I think it happens to a lot of folks, is you've feeling sorrow, feeling disappointment, feeling, whatever it is a normal human emotion that no matter how well trained you are, we're all going to have these
Yeah.
emotions, right? I think dealing with it sometimes for a period of time, okay, then when we start to live there, I think that's where the problem is, right? Like this is my home now. I'm just the guy that gets disappointed all the time. I'm just the guy that had the bad luck at work. I'm just the guy that you almost start establishing an identity around, your luck, so to speak, right? Instead of just going like, hey, this was something that happened. Can I learn from it? Can I pivot? Can I move forward? And I
Yeah.
think the stuff that you're coaching people on is really, really geared around this. So anything else, this has been a great talk. Time has flown
Absolutely.
by.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to leave our audience with? And I'm actually just curious on a personal level for what you do in multifamily. Do you guys bring investors together or is it all your own thing? Do you have
Yeah,
a
about
portfolio where people can
80%
invest in?
we syndicate. And so if people would like to learn more just about what we do, Yarusi Holdings is our parent company. And so my last name Holdings, and you can find a lot about us and just some of the offerings we've worked on. But I'd love to tie into one thing that you had left off on there is that, the human brain is like on average like 3 pounds, right? But it takes up so much energy. What it is, because each and every day we have about 80,000 thoughts, of which about 95% of them are just subconscious. And
Yeah.
so if you're talking to yourself each and every day, right, that I'm not worthy, I'm stupid, I just don't have enough education, I don't, I'm just not, I won't be able to do it. Well, you are not aware, but each and every day your mind's putting that into the universe because you're
Yeah.
only really thinking 2 to 5% of the time is actually you constantly making a decision. And so you're repeating that same thing each and every day. And the time that we just done this podcast, you maybe had 2 to 4 thousand thoughts, of which they've just been something that you didn't even think was happening, but there's all these parts. I can never do this, can never do that, can never do this, right? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have never told you I could buy, $300 million of real estate. It would have been like, I don't even understand what you just said kind of
Right.
conversation,
Right.
right? I have no clue at all. But then through small steps, right? Small steps become big steps when they're put together.
Yeah. And I think, like to your point, those little messages that we're saying to ourselves, or that inner talk, or even subliminal talk, it's almost like a mantra, right? It's repeating
Mm-hmm.
itself in our head, and it's conditioned. And to replace it, you've got to find a new way of conditioning, a new way of talking to yourself, which is going to come from a new way of showing up in the world, right? Showing up for yourself, doing the things that you said you're going to do. Pretty soon that back speech starts getting repeated, I think, with these new patterns.
And you can see the patterns and everything. Like think about how you shower. You get in the shower and you turn the water on, you let it warm up, then you get soap and you put on your hair first. Like if you go walk out to your car, right? When you get in your car, like you put your keys in the same place. You put you have a cup with you, you put that in the same place. Just prepare yourself in the car the same way. You put your seatbelt in the same way you do, right? But you're not
Yeah.
even thinking about it because we've patterned ourselves to this thing. The same thing happens with things you're doing poorly in life, right? Your same
Yeah.
bad habits repeat in the same bad fashion. The more you can make yourself aware of it, the easier is to start showing up and just saying, okay, I see the nature of the habits that have been built in here. They're not perfect, but I can start pivoting some of these to the other habits that are going to serve me better to the person I want to become.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on today. Jason's also got a killer podcast where he's releasing episodes, I think, at least a couple times a week from what I saw. Yeah.
Yeah, Live 100 podcast. And
Yeah.
so it's a 2 a week. We come out Tuesdays and Thursdays over there.
Awesome.
I keep
So
them short so I can keep up with that approach. They're
I
usually
saw
like 10
that.
minutes
No,
or
they're,
less.
yeah, they're like little,
Yeah,
knowledge nuggets, like 8 to 10 minutes. It seemed
correct.
like most of the time. Yeah. So Awesome. Well, be sure to check that out. We'll put all the ways to get in touch with you, Jason, in our show notes. Thanks again for being on the podcast, and hopefully our paths will cross again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so
All right. Take
much.
care. Thank
Take
you.
care.